Human touched an alien girl's resonant mark. Her reaction wasn't desire, but something kinder. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the main character. James Porter had never expected that one simple touch would change the course of his day, let alone his life. As a deep space engineer, James had traveled to many planets, assisted countless species, and encountered alien cultures that often defied his understanding. But nothing could have prepared him for this moment. This one fleeting contact with an alien girl that would linger far longer than the physical touch itself. He stood in the lush, vibrant forest of Valtara III, a planet known for its rich landscapes and equally diverse inhabitants. The air was thick with the scent of exotic flowers, and the sound of distant waterfalls echoed across the terrain. James had been sent here to oversee some research, but this encounter was unexpected. As he ventured deeper into the forest, his thoughts preoccupied with the complex engineering tasks ahead, he stumbled upon her, Elira. She was standing by a shimmering, crystal-clear stream, her skin a deep, mesmerizing shade of turquoise, and her eyes glowing with a soft, inner light. She wasn't just any alien. She was from a highly evolved race known for their resonance abilities, a rare genetic trait that allowed them to communicate through touch, feelings, and shared experiences. Elira's resonant mark, a glowing symbol etched into her wrist, had been a part of her since birth. It was said to signify a deep connection to her people's spiritual lineage, a mark of power, of understanding. But for some reason, this mark had not yet revealed its true potential. James, in his typical curiosity-driven manner, approached her slowly, unsure of the customs that might govern her people. He wasn't certain what he was expecting, but as his fingers brushed against the symbol on her skin, he felt a sudden pulse of energy, strong, yet warm and inviting. It wasn't what he expected. Instead of the intense, deep resonance he had read about, Elira's reaction was much softer, kinder. Her eyes widened, not with desire or attraction, but with something deeper, recognition, understanding, as though his touch had unlocked something within her that wasn't simply physical, but emotional. The expression on her face was not what he had been prepared for. Most stories of alien encounters involving resonance marks had revolved around profound, almost primal connections. But this was different. Elira stepped back, her face flushing a soft shade of violet as she examined him with new eyes. It wasn't discomfort, nor was it longing. It was something gentler, something more fragile. She had felt something from his touch that she didn't expect, nor had she ever experienced before. There was no rush of overwhelming desire, no surge of powerful energy, only a quiet, steady pulse. A connection that didn't demand anything in return. It was an odd kind of intimacy, one that James couldn't quite explain, but he was starting to feel it, too. As he looked at her, his heart began to beat a little faster, not from fear or attraction, but from the recognition of something raw, something honest, something human in the way she had reacted. Elira blinked, taking a moment to process what had just happened, her eyes never leaving his face. You felt that too? She asked quietly, almost to herself. James gave a small nod, unsure of what else to say. He wasn't used to being the one confused in these kinds of encounters. Usually, it was the aliens who needed guidance, not the other way around. But there was something different about Elira, a softness to her strength, a quiet depth that he wasn't accustomed to seeing in his typical line of work. She didn't seem like the warrior types he often dealt with. No, Elira was something far more complex, more beautiful in her own way, and it was that beauty that seemed to shimmer around her. She stepped closer, her voice soft but full of wonder. "I didn't think it would be like this," she said, as if still trying to make sense of the emotions swirling within her. James opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. He was just as surprised by the encounter as she was. All he knew was that this moment would stay with him long after he left Valtara III, and something told him that their story was far from over. The day passed slowly after that strange encounter by the stream. James couldn't shake the image of Elira's eyes, the way they had softened with something deeper than mere curiosity. It wasn't the typical response he expected from an alien species. He had dealt with countless situations involving different races, but this felt different. He didn't know what it was exactly, but there was something about Elira that made him want to stay, to understand her more. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting an amber glow over the lush landscape of Valtara III. James found himself walking back to his camp with a heavy heart, his mind racing through everything that had just happened. Elira had been strangely reserved since their interaction, her usual calm demeanor replaced with something that seemed almost vulnerable. He didn't know if it was something he had done or if she had truly felt the same connection. He couldn't figure it out, but he was certain about one thing. He couldn't just forget it. As night fell, the air grew cooler, the sounds of the alien wildlife filling the silence. The stars were brighter here than on Earth, scattered across the black canvas like diamonds. James sat outside his small shelter, staring at the vastness of the sky. He had always felt small under the weight of space, but tonight, that feeling seemed more pronounced. He wasn't just a human here. He was something else, something different. He had touched something that belonged to her, a piece of Elira's very essence. And now, he had no idea how to move forward. The next morning, he found himself back at the stream where they had first met. He was surprised to find Elira there again, sitting on a rock near the water, her legs crossed, eyes closed as if she was meditating. Her presence seemed different today, more grounded, like she had come to terms with something. James approached quietly, not wanting to disturb her, but Elira sensed him long before he was close. She turned her head, her glowing eyes meeting his with a gentle warmth. "I knew you would come back," she said softly, the tone of her voice almost playful. James smiled, taking a seat next to her. "I needed to," he said simply. There was an awkward silence between them, one that neither seemed ready to break, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that held unspoken words, the kind that allowed people to simply exist together without needing to say everything. Elira finally spoke again, her voice quieter this time, more serious. "What you did yesterday, it wasn't just a touch, was it?" James looked at her, confused at first, but then it clicked. He nodded slowly. "No, I didn't think it was either," he said. Elira's eyes flickered with something unreadable, but then she smiled, a soft, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "I felt it too. The connection. I've never felt anything like it before." James's heart skipped a beat. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment when she would either confirm or deny the strange pull between them. "What does it mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elira looked down at her hands, the resonant mark glowing faintly in the sunlight. "It's not something I can explain easily," she replied. "But it's something deeper than desire. It's a bond that's formed when two beings share something pure, something that goes beyond our physical forms. It's a recognition, not just of the body, but of the soul." James felt his chest tighten at her words. "I think I understand," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I don't know what to do with this bond." Elira turned to face him fully, her eyes locking onto his with a knowing gaze. "You don't need to do anything. Just let it be. Sometimes, the strongest connections don't need to be acted on. They just exist, quietly, in the background, guiding us." James took a deep breath, letting her words settle in. He didn't know where this would lead, but for the first time in a long while, he felt at peace with the unknown. As the wind picked up, carrying the sweet scent of the alien flowers, James knew that this moment, this connection with Elira, was something he would never forget. The days on Valtara III blurred together as James continued his work. He focused on the research and tasks assigned to him, but there was a constant distraction in the back of his mind, the strange bond he had formed with Elira. He found himself seeking out her company more often, although the connection between them remained unspoken, delicate, and undefined. Each time they met, there was an underlying current of understanding that neither of them fully understood. Elira, for her part, seemed to grow more comfortable with the strange sensation as well. They had both felt it, the quiet resonance that seemed to stir something deep within them. But neither of them had dared to speak of it further. The tension between them, however, was palpable. Elira was a fascinating being, her intelligence, her calm demeanor, her connection to the planet and her people. Everything about her drew James in, even when she remained reserved. One evening, James decided to take a break from his work. The stars were especially bright that night, the sky clear, offering a breathtaking view. He walked out of his camp, gazing up at the expanse of the cosmos, lost in thought. A soft sound interrupted his contemplation, a slight rustling in the distance. He turned, and there she was, standing near the edge of the forest. Elira's silhouette was framed by the soft glow of the alien flora around her. Her usual calm expression was replaced with something softer, more introspective. She was waiting for him. James stepped toward her, his heart beating a little faster. "Elira," he called, his voice steady, yet unsure. She turned toward him, a small smile playing on her lips. "James," she replied, her voice warm. "I thought I might find you here." He stopped a few feet away, unsure of what to say next. "Is everything all right?" he asked, his concern genuine. Elira nodded, her eyes meeting his with a quiet intensity. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice low, "about what happened between us." James felt his chest tighten slightly. He hadn't expected her to bring it up, but the question hung in the air between them. "I know it's strange," she continued, "but there's something about you that feels different. I've never felt this kind of pull before. It's not like anything I've known." James took a deep breath. This was the moment. He could feel the weight of her words, the honesty in them. "I've felt it too," he admitted, his voice soft. "I don't know what it is, but I can't shake the feeling that there's something more here. Something that goes beyond just being in the same place at the same time." Elira stepped closer, her presence calming yet electrifying. She looked up at him, her expression a mixture of curiosity and something deeper. "Maybe it's not something we need to understand right now," she said. "Maybe it's enough to just feel it, to let it exist between us without needing an explanation." James nodded, a sense of relief washing over him. He hadn't expected answers, but Elira's words made him realize that not everything needed to be explained. Some things could simply be. They stood there for a long while, side by side, watching the stars above. The quiet connection between them deepened, a shared understanding without the need for words. Eventually, Elira turned to him, her face thoughtful. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like," she asked, "to not have the weight of all these expectations on you? To just be?" James was taken aback by the question, but it resonated with him in ways he couldn't articulate. "I think about it more often than I should," he said with a half-smile. Elira's gaze softened. "Maybe we could just be for a little while," she suggested. And in that moment, James realized that sometimes the simplest answer was the right one. Sometimes it wasn't about finding answers, but about sharing the silence and the stillness of the world around them. They didn't need to know what the future held or what their connection truly meant. For now, they could just be together. The stars above them seemed to shine a little brighter as the night stretched on, and for the first time in a long while, James felt that everything was exactly as it should be. The following days felt like a calm before the storm. As the sun rose each morning over the misty forests of Valtara III, James found himself spending more and more time with Elira. They would explore the vast landscapes, wandering through the alien forests and across the crystal-clear lakes. Though they did not speak much about the bond between them, it was always present, like an unspoken promise. Elira had become something more than a mere alien to him. She was a companion, a friend, and someone who understood him in ways he never thought possible. She had opened up to him more than she had with anyone else. The connection was undeniable, and yet neither of them was in a hurry to define it. They both understood that sometimes letting things evolve naturally was the best path forward. One evening, as they sat by a quiet stream, watching the moonlight dance on the water, Elira spoke again. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Do you think we'll ever fully understand each other?" she asked, her gaze fixed on the water, as if searching for an answer in its ripples. James leaned back against a rock, his eyes on her. "I think," he began slowly, "that understanding each other completely might not be the point." Elira turned to him, her eyes curious. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I think," he continued, his voice steady, "that we're always going to be different. We come from different worlds, with different histories, different bodies. But maybe that's what makes the connection so special. We don't need to fully understand everything to feel something meaningful." Elira's eyes softened, and she nodded thoughtfully. "I see," she said quietly. The wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of alien flowers. For a long time, Neither of them spoke. They simply sat there, together, in comfortable silence. Eventually, Elira stood up and stretched her arms toward the sky. "There's a place," she said, looking back at James, "where my people go to connect with the past, to feel the pulse of the land. It's a sacred place. Would you like to see it?" James stood as well, his curiosity piqued. "I would like that very much." The following morning, they set out on a journey deep into the heart of the planet. The terrain became more rugged, the air thicker with the scent of ancient trees and rich soil. Elira led the way, her steps sure and confident, as though she had walked these paths 1,000 times. As they walked, she spoke of her people, their traditions, and their deep connection to the planet. "We believe," she said, "that the land itself holds memories, not just from our past, but from the universe itself. Every stone, every tree, every river is a part of something greater." James listened, fascinated by her words. "I've never heard anything like that before," he said. Elira smiled. "It's hard to explain to those who aren't from here," she said. "But I think you might understand, in your own way." The journey took several hours, and as the sun began to set, they arrived at the sacred site. It was a clearing, surrounded by towering trees whose trunks shimmered with a soft, ethereal light. In the center of the clearing was a large, smooth stone, its surface covered in intricate patterns. Elira approached the stone and placed her hand on it, her fingers tracing the patterns. "This is where we come to remember," she said, "to connect with our ancestors and with the earth." James watched in awe as Elira stood there, her eyes closed, her connection to the land palpable. He felt a strange pull in his chest, as though the very air around him was alive with energy. For a long time, they simply stood there in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Eventually, Elira turned to him and smiled softly. "Thank you for coming with me," she said. "It means more than you know." James smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through him. "I'm glad I came," he said quietly. They sat down together on the stone, the evening air cool around them. For the first time since arriving on Valtara III, James felt a sense of peace. Not the kind of peace that came from solving problems or completing tasks, but the kind that came from simply being present in the moment, being with someone who understood him in ways he couldn't quite explain. "I think," James said, his voice thoughtful, "that I'm starting to understand." Elira looked at him, her expression soft. "Understand what?" she asked. "That maybe," he began. "Sometimes the greatest connections are the ones we can't explain. And that's okay." Elira nodded slowly, a gentle smile crossing her lips. "Maybe that's what makes it so special." They sat there in the fading light, the sound of the wind through the trees and the distant calls of alien creatures filling the air. James didn't know what the future held for him and Elira, but for the first time in a long while, he wasn't worried about it. Whatever came next, he was ready for it. Together, days on Valtara III continued to pass in a quiet rhythm, and with each passing moment, James found himself more drawn to Elira. They spent their time in a kind of unspoken harmony, the bond between them growing stronger with every shared glance and every gentle word. Yet, as time moved on, James felt a growing sense of unease. The connection they had formed, although beautiful, was still something he couldn't fully comprehend. And as much as he cherished the bond, a part of him began to wonder what the future would hold. Elira, for her part, was equally affected by their growing connection, though she wore a calm and composed exterior. She was used to her own kind, her people, and their ways. But James, he was different. He wasn't just another stranger she had met. He had come to mean something more. One evening, as they walked together through the alien forest, the soft light of the setting sun casting long shadows across the ground, Elira spoke. Her voice, as usual, was gentle, but there was a hint of something deeper in it. "James," she began, her words careful, "I've been thinking a lot lately." James turned to look at her, his heart beating a little faster. "What about?" he asked, his voice steady but his mind racing. Elira stopped walking, turning to face him fully. "About us," she said softly, her eyes meeting his. "About this connection." James's chest tightened, unsure of what to say. He had felt it too, the unspoken bond that had woven itself between them over time, but he wasn't sure if she was ready to talk about it. "I don't know what it is," she continued. but it feels different from anything I've ever known. James nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. I feel it too, he admitted, his voice quiet. But what does it mean? And what do we do with it? Elira looked down at her hands, her fingers absently tracing the edges of the resonant mark on her wrist. I don't know, she said, her voice soft. But maybe we don't need to understand it right now. Maybe we just need to accept it for what it is. James gazed at her, his heart swelling with a mixture of confusion and tenderness. He wasn't used to feeling so vulnerable, especially not with someone so different from him. Yet, there was something in Elira's presence, something in the way she understood the world, that made him feel more at ease than he ever had. Do you think, he started slowly, that we could ever truly understand each other? Elira's eyes met his, and for a moment, she said nothing. Then, she smiled, a soft, understanding smile that seemed to radiate warmth. Maybe not fully, she said, her voice thoughtful, but maybe that's okay. Maybe the beauty is in the parts of each other we'll never fully understand. James felt a sense of peace wash over him. Maybe you're right, he said, his voice quiet. For the first time in a long while, he felt truly at ease, as if the weight of uncertainty had been lifted, if only for a moment. They stood there for a while, the quiet hum of the alien world around them the only sound. It was in that moment, as the last light of the sun dipped below the horizon, that James realized something important. He didn't need to understand everything about Elira or the connection they shared. Sometimes, it was enough to simply be present, to simply exist in the moment with her. They didn't need to label their feelings or force an explanation. The bond was there, quietly and beautifully growing, and that was enough for now. Elira stepped closer, her voice gentle once more. Let's just see where this goes, James. Together. He nodded, his heart full. Together. And in that moment, James knew that whatever came next, he would face it by her side, not as a human and an alien, but as two souls sharing a journey through the vastness of the universe. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, that uncertainty didn't feel frightening. It felt like an adventure waiting to unfold. The days following their quiet conversation felt almost dreamlike to James. There was a sense of peace that hung in the air between him and Elira, an understanding that neither had ever fully experienced before. The bond between them, once uncertain and fragile, was now something steady, like the earth beneath their feet. The world around them seemed to fade into the background as they spent more time together, sharing quiet moments, walks, and conversations. But as much as they cherished the peace they had found, James knew there was more to this journey. The future was still unknown, and that realization loomed over him like a distant storm. One afternoon, as they walked through the dense forest of Valtara III, James finally spoke up. Elira, he began, his voice hesitant. Do you ever wonder if things will change? I mean, we've come to understand each other in a way that feels different from anything I've known. But what happens when this bond, isn't enough anymore? Elira stopped walking, turning to face him. Her expression was calm, but there was a depth in her eyes that spoke volumes. You're afraid of change, she said softly, as if reading his mind. James nodded, his hands tucked into his pockets as he looked down at the forest floor. I think I am. It's hard to ignore the feeling that something bigger is coming, something we're not ready for. Elira took a step closer, her presence grounding him. James, change is inevitable, she said, her voice gentle but firm. It's not something we can control, but that doesn't mean we have to face it alone. You and I have something real, something that goes beyond what we understand. And I believe that, no matter what happens next, we'll be okay. James looked up at her, her words sinking into his heart. For a moment, the uncertainty he had been feeling seemed to fade away. I want to believe that, he said, his voice quiet. I do. But sometimes, it's hard to let go of the fear. Elira smiled softly, her eyes filled with understanding. Fear is a part of life, James. But it doesn't have to control us. We've already taken the first step by being here, by being present. The rest will come in time. James took a deep breath, the weight in his chest easing just a little. He hadn't realized how much he needed to hear those words until now. For the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of clarity, like he could finally see beyond the uncertainty that had been clouding his thoughts. You're right, he said, his voice more confident now. I think I'm ready to face whatever comes next. Elira reached out, placing a hand gently on his arm. "Then we face it together," she said, her voice soft but full of conviction. They stood there for a while, the quiet of the forest around them offering a sense of calm that James hadn't realized he needed. The trees whispered in the wind, the distant sound of a waterfall echoing through the valley. It was as if the world itself was offering its approval, a reminder that they were not alone in this journey. James smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Together," he repeated, and in that moment he realized that no matter what the future held, he had found something worth fighting for, something that would help him face the unknown with a strength he never thought possible. As they continued their walk through the forest, side by side, James felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He didn't know what the future would bring, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid to face it. With Elira by his side, he knew they could overcome anything. The days that followed their quiet conversation felt like a turning point for James and Elira. The bond between them, once uncertain and fragile, now felt more real, more grounded. They had accepted it. This connection that defied all logic, the inexplicable feeling that tied them together. They continued to explore Valtara III, spending their days wandering through its forests, discovering new places and new aspects of each other. The once overwhelming fear of the unknown had faded into something more manageable, something they could face together. But as the days passed, a new challenge began to stir in James's mind. Elira had been showing him more of her culture, teaching him about her people's customs, their history, their way of life. He had learned about their deep spiritual connections to the land, their belief that the world itself was alive, that every tree, every stone held memories of the past. And yet, no matter how much she shared, James couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. He felt like an outsider in her world, despite how close they had become. He wanted to understand her fully, to be a part of her life, but there was a part of her that he still couldn't reach. One evening, as they sat by the fire, James couldn't hold it in any longer. "Elira," he began, his voice a little rough. "I don't know if I can keep up with all of this. All these traditions, all this knowledge, it's overwhelming. I feel like no matter how much I learn, I'll never be able to truly understand your people, your world." Elira sat across from him, her eyes reflecting the firelight. She didn't speak right away, letting his words hang in the air between them. Finally, she responded, her voice soft but steady. "James," she said, "you don't have to understand everything. You don't have to know all the traditions or the history to be a part of my life. What matters is that you're here, with me now. That's what matters the most." James looked at her, his heart heavy with the weight of his own doubts. "But I don't want to be just someone who's here," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I want to be more. I want to be someone who can truly be a part of your world." Elira reached out, her hand resting gently on his. "You already are, James. You've already done something more than most. You've been open to my world, to my people, to everything that makes me who I am. That's something not many humans would do. And that's all I ask." James looked down at her hand, feeling the warmth of her touch. It was a simple gesture, but it carried more meaning than words could express. "I don't know if I can ever fully belong here," he said softly, "but I'm willing to try. For you." Elira's smile was gentle, and she squeezed his hand in return. "That's all I need, James. We don't have to have all the answers. We just need to be together and take each moment as it comes." They sat in silence for a while, the crackling fire the only sound between them. James felt the weight in his chest ease, and for the first time in a long while, he felt at peace. He didn't have to have all the answers. He didn't have to fully understand her world. All he needed was to be here, with Elira, in this moment. As the fire flickered and the stars above them shone brightly, James realized that sometimes the most important thing wasn't the destination. It was the journey itself, the connection they shared, and the trust that had formed between them. And in that moment, he knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. Weeks passed, and Valtara III began to feel like a home to James. The endless skies, the towering trees, and the peaceful nights had become part of his daily life, and so had Elira. They had found a rhythm, an unspoken understanding that grew with each shared moment. But even as things between them settled, James knew that there was still so much to learn. Not just about Elira, but about himself. The world they lived in was alien in more ways than one. As much as he cherished their time together, James couldn't shake the feeling that their bond, as beautiful as it was, might be tested in ways he couldn't yet imagine. One evening, after spending the day exploring a new part of the forest, they sat together by the edge of a tranquil lake. The surface of the water mirrored the colors of the setting sun, casting a warm golden light across the landscape. Elira sat beside him, her legs crossed, her gaze distant as she seemed to lose herself in the ripples of the water. James watched her for a moment before speaking. "Elira," he said, his voice soft, "have you ever wondered about the future?" She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Of course," she replied, her voice as calm as ever. "But what about the future, James? Do you mean the one we're building, or the one that's already written for us?" James felt his chest tighten. "I don't know," he admitted. "I guess I mean both. There's a part of me that's afraid. Afraid that we'll be forced to face things we're not ready for." Elira smiled softly, her eyes reflecting the soft light of the lake. "That's natural," she said, her voice gentle. "Fear of the unknown is something everyone feels, no matter where they come from." James looked at her, still uncertain. But what if the unknown is too much? What if it changes everything? Elira reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "Change is inevitable, James," she said, her voice steady. "But it doesn't have to break us. We're stronger than you think. And together, we can face whatever comes next." James nodded slowly, her words sinking in. He knew she was right. The future was uncertain, but it wasn't something to fear. It was something to face, together. "Together," he echoed, his voice steady. They sat in silence for a while, the quiet of the night enveloping them. James felt the weight in his chest ease, the uncertainty that had been weighing on him slowly dissolving. The world around them was vast, full of mysteries and challenges. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid. Not with Elira by his side. As the stars began to fill the sky, James took a deep breath. He didn't have all the answers, and he didn't know what the future would bring. But with Elira, he was ready to face whatever came next. They didn't need to have it all figured out. They just needed to trust in each other, and in the journey they were on. The journey that had brought them together, in a world neither of them had expected to call home. And as the night stretched on, James realized that sometimes it wasn't about the destination. It was about the people you shared the journey with. And in that moment, he knew he had found something worth more than any answer could ever give. He had found someone who made the unknown feel like an adventure, not a fear. And with Elira, he was ready for whatever came next. As time continued to unfold on Valtara III, James and Elira found themselves more intertwined in each other's lives than they could have anticipated. The days flowed seamlessly, the bond between them growing with every shared glance, every unspoken word. The once unfamiliar world around them had slowly become a backdrop to their connection, as though the planet itself was now a part of their shared journey. Yet, despite the peace they had found in each other's company, there was a growing sense of restlessness within James. The future was still uncertain, and while he had learned to embrace the present, the knowledge that things would change was never far from his mind. He didn't want to lose what he had found with Elira. One evening, as they sat under the canopy of alien trees, the soft hum of the forest surrounding them, James finally spoke what had been weighing on his heart. "Elira," he said, his voice tinged with vulnerability, "I've been thinking about everything. About us. About this world. And I'm scared." Elira turned to him, her expression calm, but her eyes full of understanding. "What are you afraid of, James?" she asked, her voice as soothing as always. James paused, trying to find the right words. "I'm afraid of what's next. I'm afraid that, at some point, we'll be faced with something we can't overcome. That no matter how much we care for each other, the world will still change, and we won't be able to handle it." Elira studied him for a long moment, as if weighing his words. Then, she reached out, her hand gently resting on his. "James," she said softly, "fear is a part of life, but it's not something we have to let control us. We've already faced so much together, and we've come through it stronger. Whatever happens, we'll face it side by side." James looked into her eyes, and for the first time in a long while, he felt the weight of his fears lift slightly. He had always been someone who feared the unknown, but with Elira by his side, it didn't seem quite so daunting. "I want to believe that," he said, his voice quieter now. "I do. But sometimes, it's hard to see beyond the uncertainty." Elira smiled, her fingers gently brushing against his. It's okay to feel uncertain, but don't let that stop you from moving forward. You don't have to have all the answers right now. Just take it one step at a time. And I'll be here with you, every step of the way. James squeezed her hand, feeling the warmth of her words seep into him. She was right. He didn't need to have everything figured out. He didn't need to know what the future held. All he needed to do was trust in the connection they shared and the strength they had found in each other. Together, he whispered, the word feeling like a promise. Elira nodded, her eyes soft with affection. Together, she repeated. The night stretched on, the stars above them shining brightly in the sky. As they sat there, side by side, the world around them felt less like a vast, unknown place and more like a home. James didn't know what the future held for him and Elira, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid to face it. Whatever challenges came their way, he knew they would face them together, just as they had with everything else. And in that quiet moment, with the night sky stretching endlessly above them, James felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that, no matter what, he wasn't alone. With Elira by his side, he could face anything,